Mr. James Drury, welcome to WBZ.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here tonight.
And your second time. I've had you on before.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And I'm delighted to be back. And we have Firehouse to talk about and other news. So,
well, let's lead with the other news, because when I called you to coordinate you coming on the radio, you mentioned that the Gene Autry Museum, there's a little entertainment that will be going on, and as well other information surrounding probably your most famous role as the Virginian. So why don't you tell people what's upcoming within the next 2 or 3 weeks?
Well, on the 22nd of this month, 22nd of September, we have a all-day open house at the Gene Autry Museum in Glendale, California, which, as you may know, is a multi-million-dollar art museum of the first water and a tremendous art collection and collection of Colt revolvers and so forth. And it's, of course, financed and operated by the Gene Autry Enterprises and Jackie Autry, who owns the Los Angeles Angels, as I understand it.
Mm-hmm.
And her assistant, Maxine Hansen, has arranged for all of this. And we're actually having... I think 7 members of the cast that are still alive and kicking are going to be there for the 50th anniversary of the start of the Virginian, which started in September of 1962. So I'm just grateful that we're all still vertical and able to attend the meeting. And we'll be there, and then there's a banquet, a barbecue banquet at night at the museum, and a lot of the people that have been involved in the show over the years are going to be there, and I'm really looking forward to seeing a lot of old friends and some all my colleagues will be there. We'll have Roberta Shore, Randy Boone, Gary Clark, Don Quine, Diane Roeder, Sarah Lane, and Clu Gruliger has agreed to come, and he doesn't come to hardly any of these things or autograph shows, so we're just delighted to have him, and he'll be a big hit, I'm sure. And we also have, of course, L.Q. Jones, who was very instrumental in the show and will be there, and quite a few leading ladies. I understand Jan Shepard and Ruta Lee will be there, and I don't know exactly who else, but quite a few people that have worked on the show in the past will be coming around, including our bartender. So...
It's funny, you mentioned L.Q. Jones, and he was interwoven around a number of series. Obviously, the Virginian, I think the first season or first 2 seasons of Cheyenne, he was kind of like a sidekick to Cheyenne.
Right.
And I always loved him, and my favorite role, and I don't want to get off track here, but my favorite role of his was from Casino. Did you see him in that movie with...
Certainly did. He was wonderful in that.
I loved his role in that. Really did.
Well, when we were last year, I was fortunate enough to receive the Silver Spur Award from the Hollywood Real Cowboys. That's REEL. They're an organization out there that gives that award annually, and Maxine Hansen was involved in that as well. And L.Q. was the presenter who gave me the award. And we were looking through some of the old film, and, L.Q. was in Elvis's first picture, Love Me Tender, where I played one of Elvis's older brothers. He was in a pilot that we made for Andy Kennedy, who produced the Johnny Ringo, the Rebel series. And we did a spinoff called The Yank, which never sold to the networks, but he was instrumental in that picture. And then he was heavily involved in the Virginian, and we did a picture for Disney called 10 Who Dared. I left the first party of men that went down through the Colorado River Rapids, and he was heavily involved in that. So our careers have been just neck and neck all the way through our lives, and we worked many times together, and always very happily. We've had a wonderful relationship over the years. So,
well, we will mention this event coming up on the 26th. We will mention it a number of times this hour. Let me tell you. takes you back, doesn't it? Either to a couple of years ago in Encore Westerns, or if you're like me, you remember Tuesday nights listening to that theme as the Virginian took over our TV sets. And the Virginian, they did something unusual. They didn't do a half hour. They didn't do an hour. They did a 90-minute show, which was, and still, is not the norm for TV. My guest right here is Mr. James Drury, and you are filling up my phone lines, James, so do you mind if we start with taking phone calls?
Not at all. I just want to correct one thing. Before we went off, you said it was the 26th, and it's the 22nd in Los Angeles at the Gene Autry Museum. 22nd of September.
I am very sorry.
No problem.
Let me write that down now, and let's go to Gary in Michigan. Gary, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. This is Gary Collins II from Ypsilanti, Michigan. Hi, James Drury. Remember me from last year?
Okay, I guess you called in then. I don't really remember the name, but I'm glad to hear from you again.
Great. Well, I've got a question I wanted to ask you. How can Bobby Fuller endured a wonderful 50-year career trying to work with all the guest stars, from Ernest Borgnine to Dan Duryea, to Bobby Troop and Julie London, and to Chuck Norris before his retirement?
You're taking my question. I was going to ask that question in about 15, 20 minutes from now, but since you brought it up, who were some of your favorites? I know they had a little promo that you did.
You wanted to know how Bobby Fuller endured that?
Yep.
Well, he's really a magnificently gifted actor and a fine professional, and he was able to work with these people very effectively in all of those different series that he did. And I have nothing but admiration for him. He's one of my best friends, so it's nice that we are still in contact, and we are quite often.
I know they did a promo about the different guest stars that came through the Virginian on Encore Westerns, and they mentioned you being in between a Betty Davis and Joan Crawford circumstance.
Well, Betty Davis worked on the show, and we got to be great friends, and she took my wife and I to dinner and so forth, and we were, she was always calling and seeing how we were doing and all that. And then sometime later, a year or so later, they cast Joan Crawford in a role in the Virginian, and I never heard from Betty Davis again. So, those girls really, Betty Davis really didn't like Joan Crawford. I don't think Joan Crawford was very unhappy. It was not unhappy with Betty Davis, but Betty Davis really took a dim view of Joan Crawford being on the Virginian and would never speak to me again. I never spoke to her again.
So that was not an act between the two of them, as far as Betty was concerned.
Not. There was something going on there,
yeah.
And I don't have any idea what it was, but there was some bad blood between the two of them.
All right, Gary, I got other calls. Let me move on. Thank you, Gary. Let's go to, can we get somebody from Massachusetts here, Michigan, and now Illinois with Tyrone? Tyrone, good morning. Welcome to WBZ.
Oh, hi, Morgan.
Hello, Tyrone.
Well, James, I was the one that called up and corrected Morgan that you were in Firehouse and not Vince Edwards.
Oh, that's correct. Well, Vince Edwards was in Firehouse, but in the movie of the week, and then they made a series out of it, which I was asked to appear in.
And I know that, Vince Edwards was in the movie, but one of the things I liked about The Virginian is that it was like watching a good quality movie. I liked that feel to it. And, a lot of people like this Western that came out back in the 90s called Tombstone, but to me that was just too much gunplay to the point where it was unrealistic. The Virginian had like a good quality script, and it was like watching just a good quality movie. And one of my favorite episodes in The Virginian was the one where you and Gary Clark, I believe it was, went down to New Orleans, and it was all about this real-life character called Marie Laveau.
Yes, portrait of Marie Laveau.
That's right. I really enjoyed that one. That was a really good one.
Well, that was a great pleasure to do that, and Madeline Rue played Marie Laveau and did a wonderful job in that film, and It's one of my very, very favorites as well. It had a very mysterious quality to it, and it was quite a departure. And we really enjoyed making it because it was emotionally very, very rewarding to be involved in that.
James, I remember from the last time I interviewed you, and now obviously this time, a lot of people have been in their own TV series. The series may have run 3, 4, 5, 6 years, whatever, but they necessarily don't recall a lot of the singular episodes. You seem to have almost a photographic mind remembering some of these episodes, and I tip my hat to you.
Well, I do remember a lot of them, and I certainly remember a lot of them if I'm prompted. If you start talking about New Orleans, I immediately you start thinking about Madeline Rue and about our involvement and the wonderful script that was given us to do. We were very, very fortunate because of our 90-minute format, which had never occurred before in continuing television, or in episodic television with continuing characters. Never been a 90-minute show before, and our writers had the opportunity to write big, important, juicy guest star roles for men and women.
Yep.
And they came by the droves to play the parts. Actors will walk over broken glass barefooted to play a part that they want to play. And we had wonderful people coming all the time. We had George C. Scott. We had his wife, Colleen Dewhurst. We had Barry Sullivan. We had Robert Redford when he was starting out. We even had Harrison Ford in one episode. The list just goes on and on. Of course, Betty Davis and Joan Crawford, probably the two most famous leading ladies in the history of the film business. So I just felt so fortunate every morning to be going down the hill and working with these great people. And I look forward to it. And they brought their A game, and we had to bring our game up to their game. So it was good all the way around.
All right, Tyrone, anything else?
Well, the last time, James, that I saw you and Doug McClure together, and by the way, I felt really bad when he passed away. The last time I saw you two together, and I really thought it was good, too, was when you two were in an episode of The Fall Guy.
Uh-huh. Well, we were... That was Roy Rogers' 71st birthday, as I recall, and we had quite a bunch of Western actors that had appeared in a lot of Westerns were there to kind of celebrate Roy's birthday and to be in the posse chasing him or chasing behind him or whatever it was. So we enjoyed that a lot.
All right, Tyrone, thanks for the
Morgan.
call. Good night. And if it weren't for Tyrone correcting me, perhaps you wouldn't be here now, James. So I'm happy Tyrone did see the error in what I stated, and we straightened that error out, and that led you being here. Let me get Sharon. By the way, 617-254-1030. If you want to call in, I'm going to take Sharon, I'll take Kelly, and maybe you, 617-254-1030. Sharon in Peabody, Mass. Good morning to you.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, James.
Hi, Sharon. How are you?
Hi. I don't know if you're going to remember this, but I'm originally from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and you once came to the Farm Show Arena.
Yes.
And I was 12 years old, and I was waiting in line with an 8x10 glossy to get your autograph.
Yes.
And you were so good looking.
He still is.
I was standing in line, and that picture was shaking in my hand, and I couldn't decide if I was going to run to the bathroom or if I was going to wait it out. And the closer I got, and I finally got up to you, and you said, hi, and I fell to the floor.
Oh, my goodness.
Oh, my goodness.
The next thing I know, I came to, and I was in your arms, and I said, I want evidence. I want evidence of this.
At 12 years old?
Oh, my God. And
that's an extreme reaction, but it has happened, and I'm sorry it was so overpowering.
Moment of my life.
And
I could have died, and I couldn't prove it except I walked away with that photograph, and it got so bent from everybody looking at it, and I I was the most popular girl in school.
I bet you were the next day.
That's great. Well, I'll tell you this. I was out at a camel race in Nevada, and we were sitting at the autograph table, and a lady came up to me in her 70s and suddenly burst into tears. And I said, "My dear, why are you crying?" And she was just so excited to see me after. She'd never seen me, of course. And so your reaction at 12 years old was perfectly normal. Don't think anything about it.
I loved it. Thank you so much.
Sharon,
okay.
Thank you for that remembrance, okay?
Okay,
Good night now. Bye-bye. Now, Kelly, I am at that time where I don't think I'll be able to finish a phone call before I have to do news, lottery, and all those things. So, Kelly, just bear with me. James, I'm going to ask a question that is, again, referring to the Virginian, and then I want you to talk about Firehouse, as we talked earlier this week. But
okay.
There was a crossover and TV movie between the TV series Laredo and the Virginian, and you were barely in it. Doug McClure pretty much carried the Virginian side of the episode, and Peter Brown, William Smith, and Neville Brand carried the Laredo side.
Well, that was what we call a spin-off, and because they made the Laredo episode of the Virginian, it was a pilot for their show.
Okay,
is what it was, and it got picked up off that show, and we were all very proud of Laredo, and enjoyed it very much, and still very close to Peter Brown and William Smith, and Neville was a very close friend, so it was all in the family, as you might imagine, and we were very proud to have been instrumental in helping them get started.
I've had Peter Brown on a number of times. Most recently, about sometime during the summer, I had Peter Brown on. A true gentleman, and
Certainly.
One of the things that came out that I did not know, because we were talking about fast draw, and in Laredo, one year he wore his guns handle out like Wild Bill Hickok, and then he switched, and I said, which gave you the better fast draw? And he said that the standard way. And we got to talking about people in Hollywood who had fast draw, and I mentioned, I think Sammy Davis Jr. was one of the fastest ones around, and he said, I taught Sammy.
Oh, well, he worked on that very hard, and he was, Peter was and is literally a very, very fast guy with a gun. He always has been, and he worked hard at it, and the secret to fast draw is practice, practice, practice. How do you get to the Carnegie Hall?
Practice.
Practice, and he practiced, and he's still very fast, and he keeps his skills up, and it's I'm proud to know him.
Very nice gentleman. And
Yes,
I didn't know at one point he and Anne Margaret were an item.
I didn't know about that, but I don't doubt it.
No, he brought it up, so.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, that was certainly a feather in his cap if he could be around her, and I'm sure he was. So that's great. Well, Peter was a man about town, and he was on the arm of several prominent females, and I wouldn't want to go into it and let him do that, but whatever it was,
It worked.
I'm sure he was very accommodating.
All right, well, let me take my break. When we come back, we'll take Kelly. We'll talk about Firehouse. We'll plug the event on the 22nd and just talk more of the career of James Drury. But I and my guest, Mr. James Drury. Let's go to Kelly in Groveland and find out what's on her mind or his mind. Could be male or female. Kelly, good morning. Welcome to BZ.
Good morning. How are you?
All right, Kelly, I was right the first time. A lovely lady.
That's my Kelly. She's one of my number one fans and one of the instrumental members of the Virginian posse. And I'll have you know I have a posse of some 600 members around the world, and they're very involved in the Virginian and manage to send some of their members to almost every event that I go to. So I'm very grateful to Kelly and very happy to talk to her. How are you, Kelly?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing fine. I'm in Galveston, and we've been here 8 days, and I'm not going to have to leave in the morning to get back to get ready to go to L.A. But we've had a wonderful time at the beach here.
Kelly,
Oh, very good.
Kelly, are you going to be there on September 22nd?
Yes, I am.
Yeah.
I wouldn't miss it.
Who are you bringing with you?
That's great. Well, Kelly comes from Massachusetts and goes a lot of places that we go, quite a few places, and she always shows up, and then she's in charge of taking pictures of the fans with me. So she does a great job at that.
Well, Kelly, here's what I want you to do.
Yes.
Take a whole passel of pictures and see if you can get, obviously, one with you and James, and send it to my website. You know my website, morganwhitejr.com, so I can post it and show everybody what you look like.
All right. Well, that'll be no problem at all. We'll take lots of pictures together.
Yes, we do.
All right, Kelly, what was it about that show that got you to remain involved with the show and the personnel of the show 50 years later?
Well, it's obviously the cast. Mr. Drury was my hero. I love the Westerns, and I didn't know of the Virginian, and I was watching Bonanza and Big Valley, and one day the Virginian came on, and I was really upset because I never heard of it. I was too young.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, it's a Western, I'll watch it. I was instantly hooked. That show is the best.
You know,
I love it. It's full of truth, honor, values, and I absorbed it. And I became who I am because of that show. I took it all in, and it's just the greatest show. And I owe it all to the Mr. D and the cast. They're terrific.
Now, were you born here in the greater Boston area?
Yes.
Okay. Now, I don't know how old you are. You sound like you could be 29.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah,
I'll take
okay.
that.
And you may remember the name of a gentleman named Rex Traylor who used to host Boomtown.
Yes. Yes.
He was instrumental for me just falling in love with Westerns. Because when I was 4, 5, 6, 7 years old, watching Boomtown led me to pay attention to Westerns in the evening schedule, begging to stay up late, whether it's Bonanza, Gunsmoke, Paladin, whatever the Western may be, because of Boomtown and Rex Traylor, I just couldn't get enough. Couldn't get enough. And if you've ever seen me entertain or at one of my club shows, I wear a big black cowboy hat.
Oh, very good.
And, gee, who else wore a big black cowboy hat?
You know the reason for that black hat?
Tell me the reason.
It makes a much poorer target in the evening time.
You know, the Lone Ranger going around in that white hat, yeah, you can pick him off from about 20 yards.
That makes a great target, that white hat. But the black hat just fades into the shadows, and you don't know who's shooting at you.
I'll keep that in mind. And Kelly, I mean it. I want a photo of you and James Drury.
That'll be no problem.
We'll do it.
All right, Kelly.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, Kelly, thank you for calling. We'll see you in California.
Very good. You have a safe trip.
Thank you, dear.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye now.
All right. There are a couple of calls coming in. Mark, my producer, good grief, my tongue is not working tonight, has to screen them, find out their name, find out from where they're calling, and he'll put them up. 617-254-1030. That's my fancy way of saying there are 2 open lines because 2 lines are occupied. Let's go to Maryland. Bob, good morning. Welcome to WBZ.
Good morning, Morgan. Good morning, Mr. Drury.
Good morning.
It's a pleasure to talk to you. I wanted to ask you, sir, what was it like working with director Sam Peckinpah and Joel McCrea and Randolph Scott in Ride the High Country?
Well,
good question.
That was a life-changing experience. I will never forget that adventure. And, of course, working with Randolph Scott and Joel McCrea was a dream come true for me. I'd been a big fan of both of those gentlemen for many, many years, and they had never made a film together. They'd been friends for years, but never made a film, and they made Ride the High Country together, and I got to play the bad guy. So that was a great, just a great boost to me. I felt like I had really arrived when I could work with those gentlemen. And working with Sam Peckinpah was a wonderful experience. He was a magical director, and he had insights and innovations in his work that have never been matched today. He came up with things that people have imitated but never been able to recreate.
Sam Peckinpah was at the cusp of people recognizing his greatness. He was just about to explode in popularity, and
Yes,
that movie was one of the reasons.
Yes, he was. He from there, of course, they went to the Wild Bunch and on from there. So he was trying out a lot of those things in Ride the High Country, and he made one of the most classic westerns that was ever made. I think people come up to me and say, you know, that's my favorite western. And by golly, it is just about a perfect western. It has all the elements necessary to make a western, and it was filmed in glorious color all over the western part of the United States, and we just had a wonderful time doing it.
Mr. Drury, do you know that Sam Peckinpah actually created the character of Lucas McCain, the rifleman?
Yep.
I think he did. And I'd worked with Sam many times before the Ride the High Country in television, both as a writer, where he'd written the script, and as a director. So we were old friends when we got together and did that show.
Bob, did you hear, I think 2 weeks ago when I had Johnny Crawford on? Bob?
No, I wasn't.
No, I know you wouldn't have been aware, James, but Bob, did you hear it?
I sure did.
Okay, because we talked about Sam Peckinpah that night, too.
I know the character as created by Mr. Peckinpah had too much of an edge on it, shall we say, for the sponsors. They had to clean up Lucas McCain, but the use of that Winchester rifle was definitely pure Peckinpah, and they left that on there.
There you go.
Well,
Bob, I got to let you go. I have other people I still want to try to squeeze in before the hour's up.
Thank you, Mr. Drury. A pleasure.
my pleasure talking to you, sir.
All right, let's see if I can get Carl in Boston. Then we'll go to Virginia for Gerald and others. 617-254-1030. Carl, good morning. Welcome to WBZ.
Hi. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning to both of you.
Good morning, sir.
I was just wondering, are you a fan of any of the early movie versions of the Virginian?
Have I ever watched them, you say?
Yeah, or are you a fan of any of those ones in particular?
Not in particular, but I did watch the Gary Cooper movie and the Joel McCrea movie, and I saw them both, and I was well aware of both of them. And then, of course, Bill Pullman made a movie fairly recently, about 7 or 8 years ago, and I had a small cameo in that film. But he played the Virginian in full regalia, and they followed the outline of the book pretty much. We were not able to stay with the book because Trampas and Steve were both villains in the book, and we had to make them into heroes and leading men, which we did. But we kept the general outline, and the basic character of the Virginian remained the same.
All right, Carl, I got to let you go because he's filled my phone lines.
Thanks.
My name is Morgan White Jr., my guest, Mr. James Drury, and I'll take Gerald in Virginia, then let James promote what's coming up in a couple of weeks in L.A. at the Gene Autry Museum, September 22nd. But I'll tell you more about that, or he will, after we talk to Gerald. Gerald, good morning. Welcome to WBZ.
Good morning, Morgan. Hope you're doing well.
Well, thank you, and I hope you're doing well as well.
Super. And Mr. Drury, it's a thrill to talk with you, sir.
Well, thank you very, very much. I'm happy to talk to you. What's going on?
Well, I'm going to let everybody know that the Virginian is making a comeback on ISP Network later on this month. So I'm looking forward to that because I haven't really saw that many of the Virginians. So I got a lot to look forward to.
Well, you know, you kind of ruined what James was going to kind of end the hour with.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But that's okay.
That's all right. No problem.
Since you brought it up, I'll let the two of you talk about the Virginian coming back and the fact that they will be running 4 episodes in a row. That's 6 hours of the Virginian.
A marathon.
A marathon every Saturday.
Yeah, but they're going to have 24 hours of it on the 22nd. Same day we're at Gene Autry. They're running 24 hours of the Virginian. And it'll be 4 hours every Saturday from then on, and I think two shows a night. So they've got quite an ambitious schedule, and they're going to be running it for 3 years. So you'll be able to see them all, and then some.
Oh my! We're looking forward to them, Mr. Drury.
Well, that's very good, very good.
And I wanted to ask you right there, when you was cast for the series back in 1962, is there anybody notable that went up with you against the part?
To get the role, you mean?
Exactly.
I don't really know any names. I understood at one point that over 70 actors had tested for the show, and for my role, and I'm sure some of the big names in Hollywood. And I never was informed of them, and I really didn't pay attention to that because I was too busy doing the Virginian. But I also wouldn't have wanted to know because a lot of them, I'm sure, came on and did guest star roles later on.
Obviously, you were the best of the bunch.
Well, thank you very much. I had to test for it 3 times, and I did a screen test 3 times for them, and they kept saying to me, "You're too fat." So in 30 days, I lost 30 pounds, and I guess they finally decided I was skinny enough because they let Doug McClure and I know the Friday night before the Monday morning we started to shoot. We got the word that we had both the 2 roles of the Virginian and Trappist. So that was kind of short notice, but we managed to do it handily for the next 9 seasons.
And I can remember when I was a kid, you and Doug were on the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson, and you guys were part of a fight scene with Johnny.
I remember that.
You recall that?
Yes, I do very, very clearly. Johnny liked that sequence, and he put it in his Best of Carson and showed it on the anniversary every year for many years after that.
And just one more thing, Morgan, do you remember Steve Friedman out of Philadelphia, Mr. Movie?
What about him?
Well, he always mentioned right there that Lee J. Cobb was his favorite all-time character actor, and of course James worked with Lee Cobb. Can you give me just a few seconds about Lee Cobb, James?
Well, he was a wonderful actor and a wonderful man, and because of Lee J. Cobb's name and notoriety and prestige in the motion picture industry, we were able to start the Virginian. Now, Barry Giller and I, this is the first 90-minute show with continuing characters. We were able to start into production without a pilot because of Lee J. Cobb. So he was the one that really got the show off to a great start. And unfortunately, he was not too happy with the show, and he left us after 3 years. But we adored working with him and loved him forever. So
why wasn't he happy with the show? And by the way, Gerald, thank you. I've got other people to get to, but why was he not happy?
I think he felt that it was beneath his dignity or something to that effect, and perhaps it was. But at one point he gave an interview, and he said, "If I had the money, I'd buy up all this film and make banjo picks out of it."
Well, now.
But that was Lee J. Cobb, and you couldn't argue with him. We loved him.
All right, and I've got...
We're all very sorry when he left, but we had a very fine group of distinguished actors that came in to replace him over the years.
I've got 2 people to get to, and I want to give you a chance to talk about Firehouse. That little exchange about Lee J. Cobb reminded me we haven't touched upon that show yet, and I want to save at least a couple of minutes. So let me get to Dennis and Lynn. No more calls. I'm going to take Dennis now, then Lynn. Dennis, good morning. Welcome to WBZ.
Hi, how are you?
All right.
Good. I wanted to talk about a fellow named Rod Redwing. I think he came up on your show about a month or 2 ago.
My show?
Yeah. Do you remember a fellow named Rod Redwing?
I remember very well.
Yep. He, when I was a kid, I went and visited my uncle in California, and Rod actually lived around the corner from him. And I went over to his house, and he invited me in, and he had like a study of all kind of movie memorabilia, and he was a great sharpshooter and swordsman and so forth. He trained quite a few of the actors.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, he did. He was. He trained a lot of actors in fast draw, and he was an excellent teacher and gave a lot of great instruction to a lot of people. Unfortunately, I never got a chance to work with him, but I knew him, and he was on the set quite a bit, and I think worked with several actors that were on the set, and also I think appeared in a couple of Virginians.
Oh, really?
As a character. So but I never worked with him on the fast draw, but he did have a magnificent fast draw, and he trained a lot of actors to pursue that.
Yeah, he had given me quite a few of pictures and memorabilia from his movie careers. And he had a list of all the different actors he had trained, including oldies like Basil Rathbone and Cary Cooper and so forth. And he was just very, very interesting. And I think at one time he played Cochise in a few movies. And
so he was an expert archer as well.
Yes.
He was very good with a bow and arrow, almost as good as he was with a pistol. So he did everything. He had great skills.
All right, Dennis, I want to get one more person on.
Okay, very good. Thanks.
I thank you for your phone call. And Lynn, in Virginia, you were nervous. You were looking at the clock, and you were thinking, they won't have time to get to me. But you were wrong, Lynn. You're here, and you're here with James Drury. Welcome to BZ.
Well, thank you so much. It's a real honor to be able to call in. I was able to meet Mr. Drury in Memphis as well, and as well as in Dillon, and he's just wonderful in person. And I wanted to know if Mr. Drury thinks that Westerns might make a comeback. When the Virginian was on, I was watching Sesame Street, and I really didn't think that Westerns were for girls. And, of course, now watching the show, I realize that they're amazing.
What about all the girls, and I'm not demeaning the actresses, that were in these episodes?
Well, there were a whole lot of them, and they all did a wonderful job.
Yep.
I don't exactly know what she talked so fast, I don't know what her question was. What was it?
Do you think Westerns will make a comeback?
Oh, if Westerns will make a comeback. Well, the Western has been the backbone of the motion picture business since the Squaw Man, and that goes a long way back. Westerns will always be with us. If you're asking if we're ever going to have the prolific number of Westerns on television that we had in the late 50s and early 60s, I don't believe so. I think that time has passed us by. And the farther we get from the events, the farther we are removed from the actual wagon trains and the actual move west and the tremendous effort that was made to settle the United States, the farther we as people get from that, the less interesting it is. My grandfather went west with a wagon train, and I sat at his knee and heard about the Indian fights, and I grew up around him, and he gave me my woodcraft and my shooting skills. He had me shooting a Winchester when I was 6 years old. First time it knocked me on my butt, but then he showed me how to brace myself, and after that I started hitting things with it, and I grew up with that. But my children don't have that experience, don't have that personal contact with the Old West, and I think that's been one of the reasons Westerns have kind of disappeared from television, and the other reason is that there are only so many plots that you can have in a Western. And when you have 15 and a half, 16 hours of Western programming on the air every week, we kind of meet ourselves coming back with the same plots. So people kind of got tired of us. We overexposed ourselves. And television overexposes everything, but it certainly overexposed the Western. And I think that's the reason for the decline. But there will always be Westerns, and good Westerns being made by someone somewhere.
Always.
And every year or so, there's a great Western comes out.
Lynn.
So stand by. There'll be another one.
Lynn, thank you for your call.
Thank you.
Good night or good morning. I have under a minute. If you can give a brief synopsis on why Firehouse did it the wrong way and only lasted 13 weeks.
Well, it was a show put together with a very fine cast. We had Richard Jekyll, who was an Academy Award nominee, and several other fine actors in the cast. But the producers made a decision to have 3 disasters every 21 minutes. A half-hour show, only lasts 21 minutes of actual film. Well, you can't have 3 disasters and have any close-ups. And if you don't have any close-ups, you don't have any audience identification with the characters. There was no sense of family. There was no sense of involvement. There was no sense of being part of something important that was going on, like the men in the firehouse.
And that's what went wrong.
And consequently, we went off the air after 13 weeks. They paid me a lot of money to do a lot of substandard shows, and I apologize for it.
All right. Now, September 22nd, the Gene Autry Museum. That's where you'll find Mr. James Drury. And I thank you so much for coming on short notice. I know you got to fly out first in the morning. I got to say...
I don't fly, I drive. I quit flying in 98.
Okay. Well, I know you get an early morning call. On that note, thank you, James Drury.
Thank you very, very much, and I hope to talk to you again sometime.
Oh, we will. We will do this again. Bye-bye.
All right. Thanks so very much. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.